Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Click and Mortar podcast. Dustin and Mike here. But today we are joined by Ben Bankoff of Adduro. Really excited to have you on today, Ben. Thank you for joining us. Ben is the head of operations at Adduro. Adduro is an effective and efficient way for advertisers to run on connected TV, and we're excited to jump in with you much more deeply in the subject area, Ben, and you were telling us about some of the cool technology that you're building as well at Adduro, so we want to hear about that as well. But if you want to give us a quick and dirty on you and Adduro, we'd love to hear the rundown.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Thanks for having me, too. It's great to see you guys again. As you mentioned, I'm the head of operations at Adduro. We are very much experts in the connected TV space, but I've spent my entire career in digital advertising, and the last 10 years really been hyper-focused on the connected TV space. So Adduro was founded by a gentleman who was actually on the brand side and worked with virtually every CTV and OTT provider out on the market, and was frankly just unhappy with the current service model and the product being offered. So he decided I'm just going to build something myself. So I joined the team here about 6 months ago now. I oversee all of our operations and account management and go-to-market strategy.
Thank you for being on with us. We're excited to jump in. Do you want to give us a little bit of background on the evolution of connected TV for folks out there that are not overly familiar? It's an exciting new area that we have dabbled in as well, and we're looking to get more into, but maybe just some connected TV for fifth graders to start, and then we can go from there.
I'll be interested to see what you think of my response on this, because I think it's a little bit contrarian to what's currently being said in the market. To me, connected TV is TV. TV has always been what it is, and connected TV is no different from that, in the sense that it's a really effective way for a brand to tell their story on the largest screen in the household that families and people tend to gather around. So it's a really effective reach mechanism. Obviously, with connected TV, we're adding a little bit of a digital element to it there as well, so we can refine it down, get a little more targeted. I very much caution people from trying to treat connected TV as a performance channel. At the end of the day, listen, this is still TV, regardless of how much more efficient we can get with it or how much more targeted it may be. It is still very much an awareness play. Connected TV to me is it's television. It's just a new way of getting that TV signal into your household. But at the end of the day, yes, it's still very much TV.
That being the case, what's different about what Adduro is doing, the buying process? You know, typical TV cycles years and years ago, there were upfronts, relationship management, handshaking, all of that happened, right? Given that, and given your parallel to it's TV, what is different with connected TV? How do you see the differences playing out here? What are you excited about with connected TV and what you all are doing in particular?
Yeah, I think that relationship component of it is very much still alive and well at Adduro. So we work directly with all of our publishers on a one-to-one basis. So we go to NBC, we go to Fox, we go to Paramount, and we say, this is what our full fiscal outlooks look like. We want to have dedicated inventory set aside for us and our customers. So those relationships are still incredibly important. Obviously, that's not the only way to do connected TV advertising, but from our lens, it is both the most effective and efficient way, but I think more importantly, it's the most surefire way to mitigate fraud. Digital ad fraud in the connected TV space is rampant these days. And the best way to really avoid it is just to go work directly with the publishers who are producing the inventory and get some carved out exclusively for you that nobody else has access to. So the relationships component of it is still very important.
I love your just how you see connected TV. I mean, I agree. I think a lot of people look at it as like this completely different channel, but at the end of the day, you're delivering a message to an audience over a television. The cool thing now is that the CPMs are much cheaper and you're much more targeted. It's a much better channel, and you don't look at it as a direct response channel. Incorporates to the overall strategy, and I guess, how do you guys articulate or try to show success metrics? We're big on leads, cost per lead, return on ad spend. we just recently did a podcast on what metrics to look at what part of the funnel, and this would be top of the funnel. And to me, how many unique people are we reaching? What's the CPM and more impression type of stuff? But knowing that it's not a direct response channel, how do you communicate success?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that can vary pretty widely depending on the client that we're working with. So some things like automotive, there's actually ways to look at exposure files relative to sale files and say, okay, even because, let me back up for a minute. The problem that I think this industry encounters a lot is that because everybody can support some form of attribution modeling, everybody's going to try and take credit for it, right? So as the brand, which I've worked on the brand side as well, as the brand, all of a sudden you're getting reporting back from each of your various vendors, and everybody's saying, we drove 1,000 conversions this month. And when you add it all up, you've got 15,000 conversions that took place apparently, yet I only sold 1,000 units. So it can get very duplicative, and there's a lot of overlap when everybody's kind of doing their own independent measurement. So, obviously we know that we play an important role in this, but I think we try to position ourselves as being very much supportive of those lower funnel tactics and trying to drive as much efficiency there as we possibly can. So looking at things like improvement in your paid search and cost efficiency there on a CPL basis or a CPA basis. Are you getting better traction on your social channels because people are already familiar with your brand? We obviously offer all the same type of reporting and attribution that everybody else in the space does, but at the end of the day, I try and very much set the tone with our customers that we're going to share this information out with you, but understand that there is going to be overlap with your paid social, with your paid search, with any other lower tactics that you're doing, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to touch the same household. So we very much exercise caution there in terms of trying to say definitively that we drove this sale or we are responsible for that lead. I think it's important that we say we play a part in that, but ultimately we try to educate our customers on everybody plays a role in this. I think it's difficult unless you get into some very, very strategic initiatives that you would want to run. It's difficult to kind of disentangle all of it and say, we know definitively that CTV drove this or that paid search drove this or whatever the various tactic may be. So we try to place ourselves in the overall marketing mix and say we can help, improve the efficiency of your other tactics, but try to steer clear and say that we and we alone are responsible for your thriving business.
Attribution and trackability. It's a great thing in digital marketing, and it's a horrible thing in digital marketing. Just because, if it's trackable, why can't we track one-to-one attribution? But it's a good way to view data or how data can be skewed or how you're looking at data. And one thing you brought up earlier was fraud, and that can skew very much so where impressions are, where good metrics are, where you're seeing success. So would love to hear the down and dirty on how fraud plays in the connectivity space, kind of what it is and how you guys combat it.
I could spend weeks talking to you about this. The way, like I said before, the best way to combat it on the connected TV front, and really, this applies across pretty much all digital channels, is go directly to the source. Whoever is producing the content that is making ad slots available for sale, that is by far the best way to avoid ad fraud, in contrast to just running, say, like on the open exchange and saying, I want to target these 5 websites. That can go horribly wrong very, very quickly. So we go directly to the source, get inventory that's exclusively accessible by us in our seats. And then in terms of how are we monitoring it and measuring it, some of the technology that we're building out is incredibly detailed in terms of the data that we're able to see within the bid stream. So we had an incident that we saw, it was probably 3 weeks ago now, of a single device ID that was hopping between, I think it was close to 1,500 IP addresses across all 4 time zones in the United States, and emitting something like 250,000 ad requests, CTV ad requests, I think every hour. So we have a lot of automated triggers and flags in place that will notify us when something like that is happening. And the nice thing is that because of the way that the bid stream operates, you can see everything. So when we're looking at a single IP address or a device, we can see everything that is trying to get into that. And as a result, we don't just get line of sight into our inventory, we actually get line of sight into all of the inventory and everybody that's bidding on it. So that's where you can start to see some of these bad actors pop up, is they'll be making calls against 1,000 different deals all within a millisecond of each other. And yeah, it can get pretty hairy out here pretty quickly if you don't know what you're doing and you're just putting blind trust in things. So we have a lot of both automated systems in place to flag those types of things. And then the other element of it is just using your human instinct and your gut. If you have a massive delivery spike at 3 a.m. or something, which we, for the most part, will not run campaigns overnight, but some instances people want them. And if you see a giant spike at 3 a.m., that is abnormal and atypical of human behavior. So just using that gut as well of saying, hey, something looks a little fishy here. Why don't we dig into this a bit further and try and unpack exactly what's driving this giant spike or whatever it may be. So it's a combination of both technology as well as, kind of having experts in the field that know exactly what to look for.
Sounds like you need a river guide on the river, and don't just shoot the rapids by yourself, because a lot of times that can get hairy. I have a little bit of a off the cuff question, but it's an interesting one to me, so I wanted to get your perspective. Essentially, it's the evolution that you've seen of this space in the last, let's say, year to 2 years. So for instance, I watch a lot of streaming sports on my TV, ESPN.com, etc. Even Sling, a lot of streaming sports there. Last year, I used to see the same ad during one broadcast 50 times. Not joking. Same ad, just running over and over and over again, even sometimes back to back to back to back at times. This year, very limited data. And again, this is anecdotal, but I think it's indicative of overall trends and movement of the space. This year, a lot more fill is happening, and I'm seeing a lot more variation in the advertiser, on the demand side, all of that as well. So that's the user looking at this experience. What have you seen, and how would you explain that? And for the average people out there, what is that indicating, that thing that I'm seeing? What's it indicating? What's it showing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different elements at play there. To start from a technical lens, unfortunately, a lot of the CTV technical architecture wasn't built and developed exclusively for this new channel that opened up. It's really just piggybacking off of the existing pipes that were in place for display and online video. That was an easy thing to do and allowed people to get to market quickly, but it certainly came with a lot of issues, and some of them manifest themselves in ways like that. I think the other side of it too is just an increased belief and investment, both on the publisher side as well as on the advertiser side, that CTV and streaming is not only is it not going anywhere, like it is undoubtedly now the way to consume television. I spent many years at a large broadcast group, so I fully appreciate and understand the value of traditional linear television, but it's impossible to look at the numbers now and say that streaming isn't here to stay, and it certainly seems to be on a massive growth trend still. So with that comes improved investments or increased investments, and I think from an ad stack standpoint, a lot of these big publishers are starting to get much better at it. Some of them still have a lot of room for improvement. Some of them are further advanced than others, but and then the other part of it is from an advertiser standpoint, right? There is this increased belief that really the audience actually is there, and it is as big as people have been saying it. And so that's driven a lot more brands into the overall ecosystem and allowed for more diversity of ads. I think live sports is kind of a unique one just because there is somewhat of a barrier to entry in terms of cost, especially relative to just standard streaming rates. So that can be a roadblock for some advertisers getting in. And then also some publishers have taken this approach of we're going to keep our live sports off limits for streaming and keep that exclusive to our linear and broadcast partners. I think we're going to continue to see that change. I would guess this season or this football season, maybe next year will be the last time that happens. Some of the big networks make their, specifically NFL, off limits to streaming, and the only way to do insertion is to do a linear buy there. I think it's getting better. There's certainly still a lot of room for improvement. I think if you were watching anything streaming 5 to 7 years ago, you were getting that back-to-back ad problem the majority of the time. That used to be the standard, and when you got variation, it was like, oh, wow, look, it actually worked. Now it's kind of inverted, and it works pretty well now. There's still going to be instances where you do see that, but I think as the investment continues to increase, that problem's going to go away more and more.
With that, one of the audience, I mean, a big belief is the audience actually here? I think there is. I think there's massive adoption. I mean, my parents use YouTube TV and they're not even technologically savvy. And so I think the adoption is there. To the point of, is the audience there? There's fraud. We work with a lot of B2B advertisers. So what would your response be to some of our advertisers that reach B2B audiences that are thinking of B2B or CTV, connected TV? Is my audience actually there? Can I actually get in front of them? Can I deliver the right message to the right person, on the right channel, basically? What would be your response to that?
I would say let's take a look. I never want to overcommit blindly and say, yeah, they're for sure they're there. Just give us all your money and we'll make sure that your target audience sees your message at the right time in the right place. Like, I think it's always because of the scale that streaming has achieved at this point. There's always somewhat of a safe bet in saying for sure a percent of your audience is there, right? We need to go figure out exactly how much of it is there and what sort of scale we can drive behind this. Given the magnitude of streaming from an audience perspective now, it's pretty safe to assume that at least a portion of every cohort is now accessible on streaming. Finding them and making sure that they're viewing something that's ad supported that's a whole different ballgame. I think it was May of this year that streaming, according to Nielsen, eclipsed both broadcast and cable viewership combined, and that trend has just continued to accelerate. So when you look at it just on a numbers basis, the audience is there. We've just got to figure out exactly what they're watching and again, ensure that it's ad supported so we can actually put you in front of them. But just given the sheer size of the viewership numbers these days, it's a pretty safe bet to assume that virtually every audience cohort is streaming at this point.
Given that and given this growth, where do you see, first of all, where is Adduro going? And then what do you see as the future of the industry? As you said, it's absolutely eclipsing and taking over, and it is TV now. So if that's your simple answer, cool, it is the future. But what do you see as the future, and where are you all going from here into the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in terms of what the industry outlook looks like, I think there's going to be more than likely some continued consolidation, and whether that's companies consolidating or even portfolio companies consolidating their offering, I think we're going to continue to see that happen. Part of the beauty of streaming when it first was introduced as like a D2C offering was that you can save a bunch of money. You're spending $180 a month on cable, and of the 500 channels that you're paying for, you watch 10 of them. Right? Save some money, cut the cord, come over here, pay us $10 a month, and get the majority of the channels that you watched anyways. That obviously got out of hand quickly, and I think if you're paying for all of the streaming services now, plus some sort of live provider like a YouTube TV, you're probably paying just as much, if not more, than you were for cable before you cut the cord. So it unfortunately it did exactly what a lot of us that were early in the industry were concerned that was going to happen, where it's going to turn into this land grab and everybody's going to put up walls and say, all right, our content is our content, and if you want it, you got to pay us, and then you got to pay them and them and them. That's happened. So I think there's going to be more consolidation within the industry, and like I said, the other side of that is both within portfolio companies. So I think it was last week or the week before, Disney announced that they're going to be sunsetting the Hulu app entirely next year and just rolling it into Disney Plus. I think that's a really good strategic move, both on them as the publisher. It simplifies your entire workflow massively when you're not having to support two independent apps in Disney Plus and Hulu, and then the separate OS versions of that and the teams that have to support them. Just rolling that in, it makes a lot of sense strategically as an organization, but then also as a user. It's one less app that I have to try and figure out where the show that I'm trying to watch may potentially be. So I think we're going to continue to see more of this consolidation. Where is Adduro going with that? It's going to be interesting to see how many publishers you're needing to buy in order to reach critical mass from an audience lens. Right now, there's, I would say, 10 on a high end true content providers that you need to work with to reach, the overwhelming majority of content that's consumed in streaming. We're going to have to keep an eye on that and see what that number shrinks to, and then what sort of impact that's going to have on things like rate. Right? If there's only 5 major publishers out on the market, that they're going to be able to control the market rate much more effectively than they can currently. So we're just going to have to keep an eye on things, see how they shake out, and then pivot and adjust as needed. But overall, I think the future of connected TV advertising is very bright, and it's certainly not going anywhere at this point.
If someone is thinking about doing connected TV, that's been out of their media mix, they've been wanting to do it, regardless of industry, what would be your biggest piece of advice you'd have for them as they're navigating that land? What are maybe some questions that they should be asking, or data points they should be looking at to see if connected TV is right for them and how to navigate it?
It is budget and rate being charged are really important pieces of that. I would say that's another area where just like using your gut can come in very handy, right? If somebody's telling you that you can run a national campaign for $2,500 a month at a $10 CPM, that's a problem. You should be very skeptical of, sometimes some things are too good to be true. And so if you've got somebody telling you that you can do all of this and your investment needs to be super minimal, like, be very weary of that, especially if you're able to contrast that against, say you've gotten quotes from 5 different vendors and 4 of the 5 are all coming in saying you need to spend at least $50,000 a month, and one of them is saying you can do it for 2. Don't trust the one saying you can do it for 2. Like, that outlier is an outlier for a reason, and unfortunately that happens a lot in this industry, where people are just trying to get the sale and they'll just say whatever is necessary in order to try and win the business. And that's bad for everybody, right? Because then that puts a really sour taste in that advertiser's mouth. They become distrustful, not just of potential vendors that they may or not work with, but really the entire CTV advertising ecosystem. So be very wary of offers that seem too good to be true, because unfortunately this industry is rampant with them currently. And then another really key question that I tell everybody to ask is, where are they getting their inventory? How are they getting it? What sort of granularity and transparency are they providing on their reporting? If they're only willing to show you the top 10 apps or publishers that you delivered on, chances are you delivered on a lot more than that. And if you add up those impressions, compare them to the total amount delivered, there's going to potentially be a delta there. And you need to figure out exactly where that gap is and where those impressions were served. Transparency is really key. And then I think another part of it too that is commonly overlooked is just communication and the partnership. We kind of live in this world where a self-service portal is becoming the way of the future, and I get it, I'm all for it. We're building one out too, but still interacting with this partner that you're paying and entrusting your business to grow and succeed, that's a really important part of this. And I think that a lot of vendors in this space miss that and just say, here's your login, we'll get you set up and teach you how to use the platform, then you're on your own in case something breaks, reach out to us then. We go about it entirely differently, and we integrate quite deeply with our customers at Adduro. And I think that is a really big piece of retention in this industry, because otherwise our industry is notorious for having incredibly high churn. And a quick way to find yourself in that hot seat is if you haven't talked to that customer in the past 6 months. You're gonna be on the chopping block when things go sideways, if that's the case. So yeah, unpacking those things, ensuring that you're gonna have a dedicated account manager that is actually gonna talk to you on a regular basis. Checking all those boxes will put you in a pretty good place from a vendor selection standpoint.
Ben, where can people find you, either on the socials or LinkedIn handles?
Good question. B Bankoff on LinkedIn. I've got 3 kids, so that's about the closest thing to social media that I do these days. Otherwise, you can check us out at adduro.io.
Ben, we appreciate you being on today, and best of luck to you in the future. We'll obviously be in touch, but really appreciate the time. Thanks for jumping on the Click and Mortar podcast. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. Great seeing you.